I know a lot of people, they get handed a baby and they feel no connection to it, so then they think, like I thought, I'm not a baby person, or they hear a baby crying and they find it annoying and stressful, or little kids have sticky fingers, so they think, I'm just not a kid person. They're so disruptive, they're so annoying, blah, blah, blah. But the reality is when it's your child, there is an innate connection that cannot be described, and quite honestly, I don't believe that you can even determine whether or not you're a baby person until you've held and cared for your own baby. It's just not... Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. My name is Caitlin and I run the blog called Mrs. Midwest. The babies are downstairs with their dad, so we have a little bit of time to record a video and chat about the fact that I am a mother of 2 babies under 2, but I, growing up and for most of my life, have not been a baby person. I wanted to talk about this today because I know this is a common fear of so many young women. It's something that gets brought up a lot, especially when I mentioned that I was never a baby person, even though I always wanted to be married. I knew I wanted to be a mother, but I just was not a baby person growing up. I didn't even play with baby dolls as a kid. They terrified me. I only wanted to play like home decorating games with my Barbies or Polly Pockets, like Legos with my brothers. I even went through like a little tomboy phase. I was a child who was scared of baby dolls, who grew into a young woman who didn't want to hold your baby at the family function, who got 10 years older, and then suddenly things clicked. So I'm going to tell you the story of how it all clicked. How I confidently became a mother despite not being a baby person, how I feel now that I have 2 babies with me constantly, and kind of guide you guys through how I navigated this, how potentially you can navigate it if you want to be a mother someday or you want a family, but you're just not sure about the whole baby deal. This video is for you, so thank you for tuning in. And let's chat about it. What does it mean to be a baby person? I know we all know those ladies, those girls, those wonderful angels on earth, those people, and I'm sure plenty of you in the feminine family are like this, but those women who even before they become a mother, they're just so good with children. They're so good with babies. They're the people you want to babysit your kids someday. My cousin, my maid of honor, best friend, she is one of those people. She is a nanny at heart, going to be an amazing mom someday, can hold anybody's baby and soothe them. And I just was never that person. I know a lot of you guys can relate to this, but I always felt uncomfortable around babies. When someone was like, hey, do you want to hold my baby? I would be like, no thank you. And if I don't want to be rude, I would just grin and bear it, and I would be terrified of hurting the child, the newborn in my arms. Even though I did church nursery growing up, I did babysit here and there. It was just never something that felt like it came naturally to me. But I always wanted to get married someday. I knew I wanted a family. I could visualize myself with older kids. I did a lot of work with teen girls growing up, mentorship programs, hosting women's conferences. I've always had a heart and a passion for younger women, like early 20s, teens. But the baby aspect, I was like, you know, in order to have those teens, I'm gonna have to have a baby. How do I do this? And I know a lot of you guys can relate to that. You like teens or you like older kids, but you're unsure about having babies. And this video is not meant to encourage everybody to go out right now and go get pregnant. Rather, it's to just share my testimony of how even a person like me, someone who felt like just so inexperienced and so unsure about babies, now I love being a mom. I love having babies around me. I get baby fever so easily. I will hold your baby if I see you. Babies are a delight to me now, and that has only happened through becoming a mother. And that is my first point. So if you are not a baby person, but you're wondering how you can, you know, start your family and feel confident, the first thing I decided to do is just forge ahead. So I was like, I want older kids someday. I know I have somewhat of a maternal instinct because I love my dog and I take care of my dog, and I love my husband and I can cook for him and create a house for us. So I'm sure once I have something else in my family, like a baby that I love, I'll take care of it. So I knew logically, and I know a lot of you guys are like me, you kind of operate through logic. I knew logically that it should be okay. So I decided to forge ahead. I decided not to wait until I felt like totally ready. I mean, financially, we were ready, like marriage-wise, we were ready. But did I feel like totally ready to become a mom even when we started trying to have kids? No. Like when I got pregnant, did I feel ready to be a mom? No. And you kind of might not ever feel ready. But that's because becoming a mother is a whole new identity, and there's so many unknowns, which is why I decided to just forge ahead. So I forged ahead because I knew what I wanted. I knew that I wanted the end goal, which was a family someday. So I decided to table my fears, table my worries that I wouldn't have a maternal instinct, table all of the, unknowns, and just forge ahead with the plan and let myself adjust as we went. And I also just kind of took it step by step by step. So when we were trying for a baby, I was focused on trying for a baby. When I was pregnant, I was focused on pregnancy. And I would read ahead a little bit, but I've always just really focused on staying in the current stage we're in, so as to not get overwhelmed about the whole journey of motherhood. Am I saying to go into the newborn stage completely blind? Absolutely not. But I think there's some value for if you're a person like me who is just very overwhelmed about becoming a mother. It's good to just focus on the here and now and take it one step at a time and learn about, the current stage you're in and try to enjoy the current stage you're in. And I found that just forging ahead, like I keep saying, it turned everything that I was scared of, like I stopped being scared and I started being excited. Because once I was in that pregnancy boat, God willing, I was going to become a mother, like I was going down that track. And so everything that I was scared of, it started to become exciting and new, and I started to anticipate the next thing. But I would have never gone through that experience if I hadn't started. And that's something I've had to do so many times in my life. I've had to just forge ahead. I'm not totally positive about something, but it feels like the right thing to do and it's in the right direction, so I'm just going to do it. And I think that's something that can kind of hold a lot of people captive for many years, because you don't identify as a baby person. You're not super thrilled about being a newborn mom or having baby things all over your house. So therefore you think that you won't be a good mom. But the truth is, those interests and those desires or whatever, that doesn't dictate how you will be as a mother. It doesn't dictate how you will feel about your child. It doesn't even dictate whether or not you'll get postpartum anxiety or postpartum depression. A lot of that is really unpredictable. And so I think a lot of people too, I'm kind of a controlling person because I get anxiety and kind of stressed out when I don't know about the future. There's a lot of unknowns. And so because of that, I like to be extremely planned. But I had to learn, when you're going down the motherhood journey, so much of it is out of your control. And like I keep saying with forging ahead, a lot of that is just taking the next step. And for me as a Christian, trusting in the Lord. And that is what really helped me as I was taking that next step and that next step and getting further down into pregnancy. And if you've seen my birth story video, 2 birth stories in one video, you know that things were crazy with my birth stories, and it was a really difficult, traumatic experience. But even with that, trusting in the Lord that He would guide me, bring me through, not getting too fixated on things and just taking the next step forward. That's just how I get through tough things in life. And honestly, stepping into motherhood was a tough thing for me because I never identified, like I keep saying, with baby people. I never really liked holding babies, and so I did worry. I even talked about this in a few of my vlogs. You guys might have remembered this. Before I gave birth, I shared with you all that I was worried about my maternal instinct. But I did know that looking ahead to motherhood, I was excited about teaching my kids about the world. I was excited to learn about their personalities and just different things I personally was looking forward to. And that's my second tip. Identify what you personally are excited for with motherhood. If you're trying to psych yourself up about becoming a mother, or if you're trying to decide whether or not you want kids, I really encourage you to not look at motherhood through the lens that you see your friends or even your family relating to it. Some women are extremely excited about birth itself or breastfeeding or the newborn stage. And that's the stuff I really could not relate with. Whereas I was more excited for when they were older, or for seeing their personalities, or teaching them about the world, experiencing the world through a child's eyes. And when I started to think about the things that I was excited about that related better to my personality and interests, I was able to become more excited about motherhood, because it wasn't like I was fixated on these things that were stressing me out, like breastfeeding and all of that. I was instead fixating on the things that excited me. And that's not to live in denial that certain things must happen when you become a mother, like lack of sleep or pain in childbirth, but it's simply to fixate on the positive and the exciting things so that you can overcome those tougher things and they won't become your entire world. It's really easy to get hung up on the stressful elements of any big change. You know, moving to a new town is exciting, but you have to start from ground zero. You have to make friends from ground zero. You have to learn the city and start anew, and that's hard. But it's also exciting to start fresh, and there's benefits. The same thing with motherhood, or even marriage. You know, you have to start this new thing, and there's so much that you don't know, and there's a lot of hard work, but then there's benefits. So for you, as you're deciding whether or not, you know, you want motherhood, or you're thinking about it down the road, or maybe you're like 13, 14 and you really don't know, and this is for in the future, I just really encourage you to not get hung up on how other people identify or even live out motherhood. Instead, think about the things you're interested in. And for me, it was honestly like, well, it's silly, but I had to relate to my dog. I thought about how much I love her and how much I care for her and enjoy spending time with her and petting her, whatever. And I thought, I do have that maternal instinct, and there's going to be things I enjoy with my children that are specific to me. And this even carries on into when you actually become a mother. You can customize motherhood to suit you, to suit your family, and to suit your desires, okay? So I used to get really nervous about motherhood because I just could not relate less with people who were so excited about breastfeeding, people who wanted to co-sleep, people who wanted an unmedicated vaginal home birth. None of that is appealing to me. None of it matches my personality, and that might be surprising to you guys because I do believe in traditionalism. I have a traditional role as a housewife, but I'm more of your typical modern suburban housewife. I'm not really a crunchy person. And I used to get really intimidated by all of that, and it felt like a huge turnoff. It felt like I could only be this stay-at-home mom if I was crunchy, if I pushed for that home birth, or if I was really intense about extended breastfeeding, or if I never had screens in my house, or whatever. And it really felt like so much pressure. It felt like just stuff I wasn't interested in, and then it compounded because I already wasn't super interested in babies, and then it felt like there were all these layers of hard, intense things that I had to do that I also wasn't super interested in, like cloth diapering. All of those things are beautiful and they're amazing and they're the right fit for some families, but they weren't the right fit for me. And that's what I had to acknowledge. I had to acknowledge that I was feeling pressure because a lot of the mothers that I interacted with and knew, they were doing motherhood in a way that just didn't suit my personality and wasn't interesting to me. So when I became a mother, and even leading up to it, I tried to find online content creators and mothers in real life that were doing motherhood in a way that excited me. Especially after giving birth, I had a lot of birth trauma, and then I wasn't able to breastfeed because of a medical condition. It just layered more things on top where I felt like, wow, I really can't relate to these crunchy YouTube homemakers that like seem to be just knocking motherhood, natural motherhood, out of the park. And here I am over here, you know, struggling with a bottle and feeling like I failed at birth, and I just felt like so overwhelmed by all my like failures, and it was so overwhelming, and it was making motherhood like not very fun for me and a lot of anxiety. And that's why I like remembered I can customize this. I can live out motherhood in a way that makes me feel confident and happy. And there's plenty of people like me who you're kind of forced into something like bottle feeding. But then there's women who choose to do it. I went online and I found mommy influencers and other people like that who they were doing motherhood in a way that I could relate to. And it made me feel way more confident and excited and happy and at peace. And that's a huge reason why I shared my birth stories online and why I also opened up about not being able to breastfeed. Because I know that motherhood can sometimes feel like this huge competition even before you have your baby, where everybody's trying to outdo everybody else, you know, with how much work they put in for their baby. And it was just really stressful for me. And so I wanted to hopefully take the burden off some of you and my audience to say, hey, I had a tough time giving birth ×2. I can't breastfeed. I'm not this perfect mom. And that's okay, because you can do motherhood in any kind of way you want to, you know, as long as you're loving and taking care of your child, loving and taking care of your spouse, your family's healthy, you're happy, that's what matters most. And I think a lot of people say that, but they don't really mean it. And I'm here to tell you, it's true. You can customize motherhood in a way that suits your needs and your family. And I talk about this with femininity content and homemaking content. You know, not everyone's going to be able to stay home and be a full-time homemaker like me. That doesn't mean you can't apply homemaking principles or customize your life in a way to add femininity or elegance tips here and there. We're not all going to be the same, and it's not a competition for who can be the best homemaker, who can be the most feminine, who can be the most natural mom. It's not like that. It's a journey that we're all on with our families, and it's about your relationship with your child. So if you're intimidated, like I was, by motherhood, not just because of the baby, but also because of all those really intense, like naturalistic things that seem to be a requirement nowadays, don't be. You can customize motherhood in a way that makes sense for you and your family, even if that means getting help, babysitters, nanny, whatever. It's okay to adjust your lifestyle to suit your needs, because we're not all the same. Funnily enough, I found that the mothers I related the most with were actually UK, like British, housewives, stay-at-home moms. Like the way a lot of those women, a lot of them bottle feed, a lot of them are just more relaxed with like the all-natural stuff, like kind of how I am. I'm much more relaxed with that stuff. They're very laid back when it comes to certain toys and methods for child rearing, and it just really resonated with me. So I started following a lot of like British mommy influencers, and it gave me so much inspiration and excitement as a mom. And it's not just to prop up who I am and validate my mothering experience. It's about getting excited to be a mom in a way that makes sense for us, because what I've learned is that your mental health and your confidence and happiness and peace as a mom is the number one thing that's going to affect your children, above how you feed them, above what color toys they have, above whether or not they're in a crib, in a nursery, or in your room. The number one thing that's going to affect them, and that's going to affect your experience as a mom, is your personal serenity and your joy. And that's why whenever I've found something in motherhood that, you know, is really just sapping the joy and serenity and peace from our household, I'll reevaluate it. That's why breastfeeding didn't work out. You know, I ended up finding out later I have a circulatory condition that prevents it, but at the time I was like, this is not working and it's making me miserable. And so I had to make choices. And I think that's what a lot of people get scared about when they think about becoming a mother. They think about misery. They think they're going to be miserable because they see other people being miserable. And there are going to be things in motherhood in your journey that are like, you can't prevent certain miserable aspects, like giving birth or whatever. But there's a lot that you can do to customize your life to increase happiness, increase peace. And yes, it's hard, but there's different ways to go about it. And I just really encourage you, if you're like so overwhelmed by all the intense mothering content out there, just know you're going to do it your way, and it's going to feel the best like if you approach it from a perspective and a method that just feels right for you. All right, my third piece of advice when it comes to figuring out whether or not you're a baby person, navigating motherhood as a non-baby person. If you're unsure about motherhood, just know that me, a person who I'm so happy to be a mom at 27, 2 babies under 2 years old, I was that 19-year-old, 18-year-old where I like never thought about kids, never even like knew if I wanted them, just knew that I wanted to get married and potentially have like be a mother someday, but way down the line, you know. Even when I got married, I was like, no, not for a while. and things just change. So I do have to add as well, there's something that happens when you get older, and that's why at 19 you cannot predict whether or not you'll want kids at 29. You just can't, because life changes, your friendships changes, your circumstances change, and also your perspective on life and your desires change. And I'm not saying you're guaranteed to like have baby fever when you're older, but I am saying it's very common for it to change, and it did with me too. Babies were the last thing on my mind even when I like first got married. And then it changed, honestly, really fast, because my nest came together. I had this house and I'm like, hey, I feel secure. And it's like this primal thing. I had a house and I felt really established with my husband. I had a great man, you know, I had my husband who I knew would be a great father. And so I felt really secure, and I became more interested in babies because that piece of the puzzle was set. And then I started spending time around people my age who were mothers. And so I was able to see, oh, this is how people my age mother, not just how our boomer parents mothered. It was more relatable. And that's something that can happen too as you get older. Motherhood becomes more relatable to you, and it's not predictable when that's gonna happen, or if it's going to happen. But I just really encourage you to not run around thinking you know for sure what's going to happen in the next 10 years. Don't label yourself. Leave your opportunities open, and leave, you know, don't be hard on yourself either. Say you are staunch, I don't want babies ever, I'm not a baby person, and then you change your mind. That's okay. You don't have to be embarrassed about that. Life changes. We don't even have our fully developed prefrontal cortex as women until we're after 25. So a lot of these desires are subject to change. That's completely normal. And whether or not you are interested in your neighbor's crying baby does not dictate whether or not you'll love your own baby. There's no correlation there. There's nothing like your own child. And there's also nothing like, you know, for some of us, I think if we operate more from a place of logic and we're a very step-by-step kind of person, you might, like me, you might not have the baby fever until your house is set, or your apartment, until you're married to the right man and things are structured. So I would just encourage you to go easy on yourself. Don't prejudge yourself as a mother before you've filled those shoes. And even after you've filled those shoes, you can always improve. You can always change how you're mothering, how you're approaching things. So I just really encourage you, don't judge yourself. Don't write yourself off. Don't write your future off. You never know what will happen. I know a lot of people, like I said earlier, they get handed a baby and they feel no connection to it. So then they think, like I thought, I'm not a baby person, or they hear a baby crying and they find it annoying and stressful, or little kids have sticky fingers, so they think I'm just not a kid person. They're so disruptive, they're so annoying, blah, blah, blah. But the reality is, when it's your child, there is an innate connection that cannot be described. And quite honestly, I don't believe that you can even determine whether or not you're a baby person until you've held and cared for your own baby. It's just not the same. I wrote this in an Instagram post a long time ago, but for most of you, you look at a picture of baby Troy and you're like, oh, cute baby, and you carry on with your life. Whereas for me, I look at it and I just want to stare at him. And I'm mesmerized, and I look at all his little details, how he looks like me, how he looks like my husband, his little coos, and even his super loud cry. It's just special, and it's him, and he's a treasure to me. And that's what people don't realize, I think, and I didn't know this either, but your child will become a cherished treasure to you. And it cannot be duplicated with other people's kids. Maybe a little bit with a niece and nephew if you're close to your siblings and you love your niece and nephew, but nothing is like having your own child. And that's why the sticky fingers and the stuff that used to gross me out doesn't bother me at all, because there's that bond and that connection there. I also want to say, it can be stressful when someone hands you a baby and they start crying, and it's not that you don't know if you're a baby person, you just feel like you're terrible with kids or terrible with babies. And the amazing, wonderful, incredible life hack is that when baby starts crying in great auntie's hands, she hands him to you, and And that's what your baby needs, because when you're mom, you're the like equivalent of sleep or milk or a fresh diaper. Like, you are a comfort to your child in a way nobody else is. No other set of arms is. Like, your smell, your voice, your skin, everything about you comforts your child and releases positive hormones in their brain and reactions in their brain, and it makes that connection deep on their side too. But the fact that I'm trying to get at is so much of, like, it's not a skill. It's not a skill is what I'm trying to say when someone hands you your baby and they stop crying. It's not always a skill. It's just the fact that you're mom. And that in itself is almost like a little superpower, because your baby just chills out and relaxes. And so much of this that you're probably worried about falling into place. You know, whenever I hold babies, they cry. When you're mom, you are a comfort to your baby, and you are something that cannot be replicated for your baby. That special bond and connection is just there. And you are, I heard this quote one time when it came to dogs, but it was like, for your pet, for your dog, they're just part of your world, but to them, you're their whole world. And I think about that all the time with babies. You know, to us, our baby is part of our world. We sometimes have a job or pets or husband, other kids, whatever. But to our baby, especially a newborn baby, we as mothers are their whole world. And that is a lot of responsibility, but it also makes things a lot easier in a lot of ways, because your baby wants you. Your baby wants to be with you. Your baby needs you. And so much of motherhood, especially in the beginning, the skill is just being there, is just showing up for your baby and giving them what they need and nourishing them and cuddling them and all of that. And it's very hard and taxing, especially in the beginning, especially as a first-time mom. But at the same time, it's not like you have to perform cartwheels and juggle or learn how to do like crazy Excel spreadsheet formulas. It's just picking your baby up a lot of the time and being willing to struggle with them as you're trying to get them to sleep, as you're trying to figure out why they're crying and all of that. And so much of motherhood is just, if you're willing to go through it and if you're willing to show up for your baby, you're going to be a great mom. And that's also what I want to encourage all of you. I know so much of us, we might worry about being a good mom, especially if we don't have a great experience with our parents or with our mother. We might think, oh no, what if I become like my mother? The fact is too, you have it within your power and your control to change things. Generation to generation, you can change things. You can maybe improve upon what your parents did. And just because someone raised you a certain way doesn't mean you're going to raise your kids that way. So that is my little word of encouragement to all of you. How I became a baby person was essentially by becoming a mother. There really wasn't any crazy mystery about it. Becoming a mother made me a baby person. Now, if I ever run into any of you and your baby, I will absolutely ask to hold him or her. So thank you so much for watching this video. If you're interested in other mother commentary videos, I have a couple on my channel. If you haven't yet, like the video, subscribe to the community. It does help our feminine family grow. Leave a comment below too about your perspective on either being a baby person from birth, you know, maybe you were all into the dolls and all of that, baby dolls, or maybe you relate with me where you just weren't. Are you a mother? All of that, I would love to hear your thoughts below. Remember too, it's a bit like a forum in my YouTube channel comments, so other people will be reading your comments. Feel free to interact with each other and just spread the love and joy. But in general, I hope you guys have a wonderful, blessed, and baby-filled week. I guess so.